And if the bones are solid, we can bring a building back to life.
Welcome to The Foundry, where leaders are forged daily. Each week we investigate themes of leadership, entrepreneurship, and mindset with some of the greatest minds in real estate. And now, the data scientist of real estate, George Roberts.
Welcome back, investors. We have this exciting part 2 of our interview with Ed Mathews. In the first part, we got to talk about his career in Silicon Valley, how he rebranded himself, the things he's doing to help mentor young investors, and a little bit about his investment thesis. But in part 2, you're going to definitely want to stay to the end because we're going to focus on that investment thesis. I want you to understand really deeply what he's doing. I mean, how do you keep people there twice the length of the average stay in your area? That's awesome. But again, we're going to go deeper into that, and we're going to make sure that you understand where he's coming from the real estate, from the entrepreneurship, and also from the mindset perspective. So welcome back, Ed.
Thank you. Good to see you.
All right, great to see you. And yeah, we're still wearing our gray shirts today. I think that's awesome. Gray shirt today at the Foundry, part number 2. And I want to hear more about that investment thesis. And, here we are recording this early in May of 2023. And we've been through a lot, right? I mean,
more to come.
I mean, you have these real estate cycles that happen every, 10, 15 years, et cetera. But we've been through the last few years. We've had COVID, and we've also had this rapid rise in interest rates. Who knows? We think we're at a plateau right now. We don't know yet.
We'll see.
We'll see. And so I'd like to hear, what have you been doing in terms of the deals that you get into? How has that changed over the last couple of years, given that we've had such turmoil? And how has your underwriting changed? So let's start with the deals. Have you changed your approach or your investment thesis to suit the new times?
So no, as a matter of fact, I really haven't. We have a model that works. And so we are entirely focused on cash flow. And the reason being is that I know that one of the reasons that real estate is resistant to the ups and downs of the market, even significant ones, is because cash flow saves you. And the way that cash flow saves you is upfront. You do a really good job of vetting your buildings, vetting your deals, and also vetting your residents, right? And so we are very focused on cash flow. Yes, we force appreciation. Yes, market appreciation is wonderful and it's part of the plan, but it is definitely not a focus. That is the cherry on top, not the main dish. And so that is, through COVID, even before, I started investing in the tail end of the recovery from the Great Recession. And I learned it really early on that no matter where the market went, if you are cash flow positive, day you turn the key the first time, and you do a good job of managing that property and keeping residents happy and in place, and providing a good product, then you can weather pretty much any storm. And that said, COVID taught me a whole lot of lessons, right? Where we used to have 3 months of operating expenses tucked away, I've since doubled that. And in some cases, depending on the building, it's even more. But at the very least, it's 40 to 50% of anticipated operating expenses is tucked away in a reserve account.
You're talking about years.
Years, expenses. Correct.
Yeah. That's huge. And I think in the past, people might have said, "Hey, if I've got 3 months, if I got 1 quarter here,
right,
then I'm doing okay." But yeah, I see a lot of people doing that. I see some withheld distributions,
right,
and people are saying, "Hey, it's not like we don't have the cash flow, but we're going to set a little bit more aside to make sure that, hey, if people are thrown out of their jobs and we're not collecting the rents, we want to make sure that we're okay."
Exactly. We want to pay the bills. And so, that's what I was talking about in the previous episode about being a good steward, right? We take very good care of the residents. The other thing that I've seen over the years, and it's taught me a lot, is, when you provide a clean and safe home and a place where someone is proud of where they live, they tend to pay their bills on time. They tend to take really good care of the building, and they tend to communicate when, life throws a curveball at them. And all of which is wonderful. We're humans, and we're supporting humans, right? And so you got to deal with them on that level, and make sure that the relationship is, we talked about that in the previous episode about building a relationship with these residents, and I fundamentally believe that's one of the things that really helped us through, like COVID, for instance.
Yeah, I love that, doing well by doing good. And also
Exactly.
maybe a little bit unexpected. Everybody talks about all the things they're doing differently, but maybe the best endorsement of an investment thesis is that it does survive the downturn that follows. Right. And being a cash flow investor, you didn't have to change a whole lot. You just hold back a little bit more in terms of reserves,
right,
to match the times.
Right.
Well, let's go deeper, because I want to know more about what you invest in and why you invest in it. More importantly, we could always talk about markets, but I want to know why you're in the markets you're in, and why does that make sense today?
So two different markets, right? We're just getting in. In fact, we just put a property in the Raleigh, North Carolina area under contract a couple of days ago. So we've just started to move into that market. Very different from the market we're here in Connecticut, where I'm focused on pretty heavy duty, value added multifamily properties in that 6 to 20-ish size range in terms of units. As a former flipper, very few, and me and my team got very good at bringing back to life buildings that from the street looked absolutely dead, and turn them into places where, like I said earlier, people are proud to live. And so whether it's a single family home or a micro family, to coin the phrase that I heard from my friend Margaret Kozlark, it's there's not a lot that scares me in terms of construction. If the bones are solid, we can bring a building back to life. And so sometimes people are already living in them and sometimes they're not. But so in Connecticut, we tend to look for C- to C class buildings in a C+ to B- area. And my job is to take the worst building in the neighborhood and turn it into one of, if not the best building in the neighborhood, over the course of a 3 to 5 year business plan. Most of the construction happens in the first year and a half, 2 years, but obviously then it's a management execution from there. And the reason that I'm comfortable doing that here in Connecticut is I live literally in the middle of the state. I live one town south of the town called Middletown in Connecticut. And so I can be in Fairfield County in an hour, and I can be on the Rhode Island border in 45 minutes. And so, the market here, because it's such a small state, I'm able to be on site, usually within an hour of needing to be there. And so that allows me to actually touch the buildings and see what's going on, and have a direct conversation with, our contractor or handyman or our plumber or electrician, HVAC guy, whatever. And actively manage those projects. I have a member of my team who manages projects, but it allows me to pay attention, very closely. And there are days where I spend the day on the road looking at projects, and it's one of my happy places, to be honest. That's the best day. Fridays are fun. And with remote investing, it's a little bit different, right? You're relying on a team on the ground who you have either like a property manager who you've just hired, or hopefully, in our case, it's a new relationship. And so we're managing the manager. And so part of that process is helping them understand the Clark Street way, because we want it done our way. And so, vetting a property manager and a team on the ground was frankly a little harder than I expected, because, obviously, property managers operationalize the way that they run, and in some cases it's a little bit different than what we want done. So we had to kind of figure out how our team here in Connecticut could support folks down in North Carolina, and I guess in about 60 days we'll find out how good we did at bringing those two systems together.
Yeah, I love it. And you can get into this business and say, well, I'm just going to listen to a dozen gurus. I'm going to figure out how to manage properties. But if you don't stand out, if you're not being unique in some way, and I love the way that you take that pride of saying you have the Clark Street way. And we heard a lot about that, like about how you're door knocking in part one of this episode. And that's huge. That's huge. That personal touch, doing well by doing good. And then also just about treating people like human beings I love it. I mean, no gimmicks here. You are just doing the right thing, and it does impact the bottom line.
It does. Yeah. I mean, the fact is that when people are happy and satisfied with the service, that they're happy to live where they live and they're satisfied with the service they receive, they stay longer, which saves us money in terms of turnover and having to lease up and all that, right? It's a significant part of our business plan to grow NOI is to actually serve the residents.
Yeah, great stuff. And it's been my observation that boring asset management plans get boring returns. So I want to go deeper into that Clark Street way and tell me, what is the most creative thing that you've done to drive returns or to create another stream of income?
So I'm a huge fan of cost segregation, even on smaller buildings. That is one of our first go-to moves. Thank you, Yonah Weiss, wherever you are, sir. And because he's about to get a phone call from me on a building that we're working on right now. As far as second revenue streams, I love creating storage. I love creating laundry facilities in the building if there aren't hookups. In Class B buildings, a lot of them have hookups, but in the Class C buildings, we're allocating basement space for new laundry. And so, it's not a lot of money, but it's a little bit. And, a little bit across a larger portfolio turns out to be a significant amount. And so that helps us from a profitability perspective. The storage thing is a relatively new concept. And so it depends on the building, right? So we have some buildings where we build lockers for the residents, and if they want access to it, it's a small price. It's like $25 a month in most cases, and so that's where they can keep their bikes and whatever else. The thing that we started doing with a couple of properties here in Connecticut is we actually built storage that's accessible to the public on the property itself, and so we've just launched that at one of our properties, and I was blown away by how fast it got leased up.
People love their storage these days.
Holy cow. You
don't want to get rid of their stuff. I mean, they'd rather die than give up this old stuff they haven't seen for 10 years. How often do they come to the unit? Can I ask you?
Not a clue. I don't think a lot.
Right.
But I think most of them so far, most of them show up when they drop the stuff off and then show back up when they either need the stuff in a year or when they're cleaning out their storage unit 5-10 years from now. I understand now why self-storage is such an interesting asset class, because we did a soft opening on a Monday, and it wasn't a lot of units. It was only 10 units, right? We did a soft opening on a Monday, and by end of day Saturday, it was full. Done.
Yeah, love it.
Yeah. So, and it's
a different model too, because I think a lot of people who are in real estate, they think, well, hey, I'll be a landlord. I understand it, because everybody needs a place to live. You're either a tenant or you're an owner. So we all have a concept of that, but the self-storage, not everybody does that. And it's different, right? I mean, you can have technology, right? You just have to you set it up and it kind of runs itself. You don't have a property manager or anything for that, right?
Nope.
No, and it's not taking any of your time.
Right.
So that's why Ed doesn't know how often people show up, because he set it up right. He has technology running the place, and now he just collects the check. So that's really good stuff.
And I'd like to add to that, I also have a team that manages it. So,
okay.
One of the things that I'm very passionate about is delegation, right?
Right.
And so, I have a team. We have a team of virtual assistants that live in the Philippines, 8,000 miles away. And I came across this concept. Obviously from the tech world, outsourcing coding and all that is something that I really wasn't involved in my corporate life, but it certainly was something I was aware of. And so when I started this business and I wanted to actually turn it from a side hustle to an actual operating business, I needed help. And so I hired an executive assistant to return phone calls and clear out emails and, all the things that they do, correspondence and whatnot. And it turned out she was really good, like really good. And so, we started looking at other roles. So, website and SEO, social media, acquisitions, transaction coordinations mostly. What else? Bookkeeping and, a whole host of other things. And so we started hiring folks in the Philippines. And, here's the thing that I've learned. they are, as a culture, they are highly motivated, honest as the day is long, passionate about serving. They are smart, they are well educated, and their English is in almost every case better than mine. And so, in fairness, it's a lot less expensive, right? The cost of living in the Philippines, a $5 an hour job is the equivalent of a $125 an hour or $125,000 a year job here in the States. So, you can pay even more than that, which is what we do, and they live a good life, and it creates loyalty and on both sides, and we get to serve our folks. And so when we were talking about using technology, I mean, I've said it dozens of times over the course of a month. Technology can be a force multiplier, and so we're a teeny tiny company. And, we're operating now properties in, I don't know, there's probably 20 or so properties that we're operating right now. And the fact is we run it using a platform. Can I mention the technology?
Let's do it. I love it.
We use 𝐁𝐿, which is a relatively new property management tool. And what really caught my eye was the fact that they would do tier 1 support. So think about a help desk. When you call for help, there's someone there 24 hours a day, a human being there 24 hours a day. And that was something that was important to us. And so instead of hiring an answering service or letting it go to voicemail, we actually have a human being or a group of human beings that are there trained by 𝐁𝐿 to catch those calls no matter what time of day. They're trained to triage and hopefully solve 75% of the calls that come in, and then the other 25% get kicked to our property manager in-house, and she's empowered to hopefully take care of the other remaining 25%, and the one she gets stuck on, she calls me, right? So
I love that property management tool. I think a lot of people are struggling. I mean, you can try it yourself, that's difficult, and you can hire somebody else to do it, but you do still have to manage the manager, as you mentioned.
Right.
And then there are ways you can support your current property manager just to make them more efficient and focus on those bigger problems. But I want to back up a little bit before that. You were talking about building a team. And I actually have 2 reasons for asking this question. I know a lot of people are building teams. I know there's at least 2 ways that you can build these teams, but I also want to hear about your personal development growth as you have progressed up to now, managing at least 18 properties at the same time. These are big properties, reminding everybody we're talking about apartments. And what size apartments are you generally managing?
6 to 20 units is our sweet spot.
Okay, I love it. That's a great sweet spot because it's not where everyone else is looking.
Right. That was the idea.
There can be great opportunities there.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's part of my investment thesis. I do look for smaller properties. They can be very mismanaged. Sometimes the owner hasn't really squeezed out all the value. You can get great prices, and you may be able to raise the rents to market even before you start to do renovations, which that's a huge cushion in today's financial environment. But now, do you hire your virtual assistants directly or through an agency?
So the first lady we hired through an agency. And then in speaking with her and a couple of friends of mine who work in that part of the world, realized that there were actually job boards all over social media that you could leverage. And so we started documenting our job descriptions, pushing them out to those boards and hiring amazing people. And so the process would be that we would publish out to the job boards in the Philippines. Janice, my administrative assistant and now investor relations manager, would vet those various resumes. I would see 3 people, and I would hire almost, usually I would hire one of the 3. And in one case, when I was looking for web development and social media, I was trying to hire one person, and I found 2 people that one was exceptional at social media and the other one was exceptional at SEO. And so I split the baby and created 2 jobs there instead.
Okay, I love it. And I know that for you, your story is a little different than many people. Some people start really young and they haven't become leaders yet. You're coming from Silicon Valley, executive positions.
Yeah.
So I know that's not going to be, you're not going to say, well, I had to learn to delegate, right?
Right.
But clearly, though, you did have to grow to go from somebody who is doing this on the side to, hey, I'm the head of a capital corporation, and
Right.
this private equity corporation, we've got, well over a dozen properties. So what were some of the pitfalls that you hit? How did you grow to get above them and rise above?
Yeah. So delegating, it was hard for me. I tend to be a controlling personality in that I want to have my finger in a lot of different things. But the challenge, the reality of it is that I require sleep. And so a third of the day I'm unavailable. And so part of the process that we go through is I look at my stress levels, right? And so when we do it basically on a quarterly basis where I ask the team now, and I was asking myself when it was just me and Dennis, what's stressing me out right now in terms of the business? And in those cases, we either delegate it or hire somebody new to take over it, or we automate it, or we frankly stop doing it. And so, the whole idea here is to keep my desk clean so that I can work on the business as opposed to having a job in the business, right? Because when I'm in the business, the business isn't moving as fast as it needs to, and I'm probably not serving our residents and investors the way that I need to make this business operate. And it also allows us to, think bigger in terms of, where we take the business next. And so I spend a lot of time on that, what's next, what's the next hill to take. And then, when I need to help, I serve our team by making sure that they have what they need and they understand exactly what their job is. And we can get into that. I can get pretty geeky on this stuff, George. So
Freaking walk out. I mean, hey, you
all
don't
right.
mind me keeping you a little longer. Let's do it.
It's fine. So, I want to make sure that as many things as possible in our world at processes has a checklist so that we don't drop balls, right? Because there's so many moving parts in this business that it's, if you're keeping it in your head, you're going to forget something. I don't care how smart you are. And so, we have checklists and documented processes for pretty much everything we do, right? And so, we'll go geeky. I'll put on my geek hat for a minute. So I am in love with ChatGPT, absolutely in love with it. And here's the reason why. I have been able to recreate job descriptions for all of the roles that we have, all the roles we're contemplating over the next 12 months. I've created checklists and process and procedures for pretty much every piece of our operation. And it's all been done on my phone, where I'll hit the microphone button and say, act as a human resources manager and create a job description that is responsible for these 4 areas of the business, go. And it'll create it. And it's about 85, 90% accurate. And then I'll tweak it and hand it to the team and let them run with it. And, so it has revolutionized how we've documented our business, how we've refined our process. We use it for content a little bit, but, former English major, so I'm a bit snobby about writing. And so I tend to do most of the writing, but ChatGPT is another way from a marketing perspective. In the last episode, we were talking about how we're really in the marketing business. It's great for generating ideas.
Yeah, outstanding. And you talk about stress levels, and that's definitely true. I know some entrepreneurs talk about brain damage, and that's the way I like to think about it. If I take this on, how much brain damage is it? So I have started to my latest delegation this week. I outsourced doing the K1s to somebody new this year who's offshore and going to save us a lot of money, because I have a lot of businesses all at different levels. Some of them are making a lot of money and some of them are a little newer. And that has been really amazing to get that sort of consulting work. I understand bookkeeping. I love accounting, but do I want to be doing that when I know that I have to grow the business, work on the business, and find the next big thing?
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I am on the opposite end of that spectrum. I despise bookkeeping and accounting, although I love my bookkeeper and my accountant. Absolutely love them, because they can do their jobs without me having to scan documents and play with a spreadsheet. I don't
know if I love it, but I greatly appreciate it. I mean, if you don't get it right at the bookkeeping level, right? If it's not recorded properly, you're not going to, the financial statement is never going to be right.
Correct. No. It's got to be right, but I would much rather pay somebody who's better at it than I am.
And get it right. Get someone else get it right for you.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
All right, awesome. Well, I tell you what, I love this interview, and I wish that I could talk a little more because I have so many questions that I'd love to ask you about mindset and entrepreneurship. But I think we need to head into everyone's favorite rapid fire round, the 7. Are you ready, Ed?
Yes, sir.
All right. So if you could be known for just one thing, what would it be?
A good father.
What's the greatest lesson in leadership you learned as an entrepreneur?
Learning to say no.
What personal characteristic has been most pivotal to your success?
The knowledge that character is what you do when no one's paying attention.
All right. I love that. That's so profound. I almost feel bad about heading into the random portion of this interview. So just let me know when to quit cutting the deck. We're going to have something. This could be anything.
No whammy, no whammy. Stop.
All right.
All right.
What are the most important qualities in friends?
Great question. So I don't have a lot of very close friends. I have, a small group, and the reason for that is it's just the way it is, right? I'm friendly with a lot of people. I have friends, but the folks that I pick up the phone and when something really good happens or something really bad happens is, probably less than the 10 fingers on my hand, right? And, the quality they have, each one of them, is that they know I would drop everything and be there for them. And likewise, they would be there for me. And so I guess I can boil that down to love. We love each other.
I love that. So it did turn out to be profound after all.
Did my best.
Can you name a book that has helped to forge you as a leader and as an entrepreneur?
Well, in the last episode, I mentioned Rich Dad, Poor Dad. So that was certainly on my, that would be the one that I would mention if I was earlier in my job, in my world. I think the one that I would probably mention now is something I actually just read about a month ago, and that's Cal Newton's Deep Work. And so, being somebody who has, and I'm quick to admit that I have entrepreneurial ADD and probably actual ADD. And so I'm easily distracted by really cool ideas, right? And shiny objects off in the corner and whatever else. And so, one of the things that book taught me was I had a boss, Pete Black, who would say, keep the main thing, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of deep work, it allows me to carve out, 60 to 90 minutes to really focus on just one thing, get it done, do it well, take a break, celebrate that, and then move on to the next, hill to take. That has fundamentally changed the way I operate, because there was a time where I used to be the guy that would have 15 different tabs open on my Chrome browser and I'm bouncing around, and now it's one, and I get a lot done.
I love that. And I know there's another book that you speak passionately about, so we could turn this into maybe the 7.5.
Okay.
Russell Brunson, how can I give myself a raise this week?
Yep. Yeah. So I found Russell Brunson. Actually, I heard about him when I was working in technology world, because he was building this landing page software that eventually became ClickFunnels. And so I was intrigued by it. And so I kind of dug into him and understood. And I read all 3 of his books: Expert Secrets, Traffic Secrets, and .com Secrets. I think in that order, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And, what I found was first off, one of the most unique thinkers in the marketing software field I have ever had the pleasure of meeting. And I don't know Russell at all, but I think I do, having read his books. But, the fact is that you can read those 3 books and understand in granular detail what the playbook is to grow any business on this planet. If you follow his playbook, it is a roadmap to success. And I have a lot of respect for him, and because he's really good at boiling 10 years of experience down to 200 pages, and then making those 200 pages easily consumable by folks that, aren't necessarily natural or trained marketers, right? And so I have a lot of respect for the frameworks that he puts in place. I use a lot of them every day in our businesses. And yeah, I'm a huge fan.
Great, very, very profound. I love that. And I want you to tell us or describe a failure or misstep and what that's taught you.
Oh, so I have so many, so let me preface the story I'm going to tell with a comment. And that is that a lot of businesses run where you've got to be perfect and you can't make mistakes. I totally and completely reject that, because I don't think mistakes are bad. I think they're just lessons. Some of them are expensive, and like the story I'm about to tell you. But the fact is that, the only way you get better, the reason growth hurts, the reason you feel pain when you make a mistake is because growth hurts, right? And you want to do the right thing. So the key is to, again, stress levels. As you said, I'm going to borrow that, by the way. What's the chances this is going to cause me brain damage, right? And how much? The fact is that I think you can take mistakes and create a system so that you never have to make that mistake again, because you can avoid having to make the decision that caused the mistake. And so, we embrace mistakes here at Clark Street, and I've done that. That's definitely something from the playbook I took from my Silicon Valley days. Okay, so the story when Ed screwed up. I owned a 5-unit building on Arch Street in New Britain, Connecticut. And we closed on a Tuesday, and a Thursday morning. At that point, we were working with a property manager locally, and she called me at 6 a.m. And I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but when your property manager is calling you at 6 a.m., it's never good news, right? Ever. It's something's wrong. And in this case, the building next door, which was a 12-unit building, had caught fire. And I won't get into the circumstances of it because it was well publicized and I'm pretty sure well litigated. But I don't believe anyone went to jail, but I think that was a possibility. And I didn't own the building. So burned out brick building. It was a vintage, like 1890 building. Turns out they built them really well back then. And so I went and checked the building out and started to realize that the fire had only been contained to a certain portion of the building. It was, how should I say, a simultaneous lightning strike, one in the basement and one on the roof, right? In the same spot. And so it only burned one big corner of the building. And so I called a structural engineer and, without permission, walked the building with that structural engineer. And I said, tell me how bad it really is. And he said, it's actually not that bad. And so I then, with a friend of mine, we figured out who the building owner was. We contacted him and offered to buy the building from him for a very small amount of money. And over the course of a 3-4 month conversation, the gentleman decided that it was in his best interest to sell the property. So we bought it. And so, when you acquire a property that's fire damaged and it was in horrendous shape already prior to the fire, first off, it was vacant, right? So, there's no human beings living in it, thankfully, but the conditions in the building were appalling. And so, step one is to create security, right? So board up all the windows, down the doors, then get it weather tight. And so in that step of getting it weather tight, we had to remove the roof because most of the, huge portion of the roof had burned out, right? And this was a brick building, so it was basically a chimney. And so I hired a general contractor to do the security, as well as to shore up a handful of areas that needed additional support while we contemplated what we were going to do with the flooring systems. And so I also hired him to remove the deck on the burnt rafters on the roof. And so he hired a subcontractor who I didn't know. And that subcontractor basically cleared the fourth floor of that building of all wood, all supports, everything. Cleared the fourth floor, not just the roof, everything. So all of the support beams, all the joists, everything. And I was in New York. I believe I was actually at a Broadway show with my wife and 2 kids. And I got a phone call saying, hey, we've had an accident. And first thing you ask is, okay, is anybody hurt? No, no one was hurt. Okay, good news. What happened? Well, the supports are gone, and the back of the building, which was 50 feet long, 14 feet tall, 3 courses of brick, broke off and fell into the parking lot. And I said, okay, first step is call the fire department so that they can, help out. And, I called the building official, and he already knew about it, obviously. And so, the second step is, making sure no one goes in the building at all. And as I was on the phone with the contractor saying no one goes in the building, the front of the building fell into the building. So the back had fallen off. It was about 14 feet tall. The front of the building, which was 4 courses and 18 feet tall, fell into the building and basically obliterated all the floor joists on the 3rd floor. And here's the lesson learned. I vetted the living daylights out of the general contractor. I knew everything about him. I knew every single project he'd been on. I actually knew some people that he'd worked for. I checked his licenses. I checked his insurance. He signed our contract and our indemnification clause. And I had, his insurance company send me direct from them his proof of insurance. I had a W-9 in place. We did it right. What I didn't do was vet his subcontractor, and I allowed him to vet the subcontractor. It turns out that guy didn't know what he was doing. And so not only did he not know what he was doing, but he also put kids in the situation unsupervised, kids being like 18-year-olds. Yeah. And they went crazy with the sawzalls and basically took down all the joists or the support. And so, the good news is that eventually we were made whole. But for the grace of God, obviously there was, no one ever injured in the building. And after that episode, we actually made the hard decision to demolish the building and start over. And so that's actually one of the development projects that we're going to be working on soon. So if I had to do it over, I would vet every single human being who has responsibility on that project site. I don't care who they are, who they know, what they've done, the pictures they can show me on their phone. I don't care. I want to know in granular detail, who have you worked for? How did it work out? Did you deliver on time? Did you deliver with safety? And, do you understand the magnitude of what is the responsibility I'm asking you to take on? And, lesson learned, and very lucky that no one was hurt.
Very powerful, Ed. I want to say that success is a poor teacher. So if we don't get out there and share these difficult moments, then we're not really being great mentors. We're not really helping people learn.
Right.
Well, again, I feel like I'm at a moment where it's hard to follow up something so profound with that. But can you give us a quote to help forge our listeners as leaders and entrepreneurs?
Always tell the truth. It's easier to remember.
Now, how do we reach you?
So the best way to reach me is through our website, clarkst.com. You can also find me, Ed Mathews, and it's with 1 T, by the way, on all the social media channels, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, you name it, as well as my company, Clark Street Capital. And if you're looking for, once you're done listening to George's amazing podcast, if you're looking for another one, the Real Estate Underground is our podcast, and we interview operators and investors just like George and I, and hopefully drop a whole bunch of gold nuggets along the way for our listeners. So that's the Real Estate Underground, and we would love to have you listen.
Well, that's great. And if you're looking for a great guest on his podcast, please check out mine. And
exactly. Exactly.
And with that, I just want to say thank you so much. This has been a very deep episode. I appreciate you sharing everything, including your missteps, the raw, unvarnished truth. I told you, ladies and gentlemen, if you listen to the end, you're definitely going to get a lot of gold nuggets of wisdom. So thank you so much for taking your time to share your knowledge and experience with our audience, Ed.
Yeah, my pleasure, George. It's good to see you, my friend.
All right. Thank you.